Today we're going to show you how to properly set up a SID motion control fork with the Poplock handlebar remote device. The first procedure is to ensure that the clocking on the remote setup on top of the fork is correct. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to disassemble that and reassemble it with the proper clocking. First thing we need to do is take our 1.5 millimeter hex here, and we're going to pull off the floodgate cap. The next step would be to take our external circlip pliers, carefully removing the circlip, and try not to overextend or overbend those little circlips. We'll remove the spool and the spool spring. And lastly, we will actually remove the cable stop device. To properly set the clocking on the remote spool control for the motion control SID fork, we're going to start at the very beginning by placing the cable stop. The cable stop needs to go on top of the top cap there. The key part is the actual exit of the cable, and the cable stop here needs to be faced pretty much directly towards the front tire, so at an angle about like that. We want to make sure at this point that we leave the bolt loose. The second procedure is to make sure that we have the spool timed properly. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn the hex all the way clockwise till it stops. Then what we want to do is we want to take the spool and we want to slide it into a position so that the fin here actually touches the cable stop. If you can't get that to touch perfectly, you may have to pull off the spool and readjust the cable stop one click and then try it again. Now that we know that the spool is timed properly with the cable stop, we're going to go ahead and tighten the cable stop onto the top clamp with our 2 millimeter. Okay, step number 3 is going to be clocking the remote spool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn the spool all the way around, and I'm going to insert the spring underneath. It's a good idea to put a little bit of grease on the spring before you slide it in there. The spring only goes in one way. Now what I want to do is when I insert this back on, you're going to see a reference mark right here on the cable stop. I want to make sure that this pinch bolt, which is going to hold the cable, and that reference mark lines up properly. So I'll slide that up there. Here's my pinch bolt, here's my reference mark. Now all I need to do is put the circlip back on there. We do want to keep in mind that when we put this external circlip on, we don't want to overspread it. We want to spread it just enough so it slides on top of the hex and clicks into place. You may have to use your finger a little bit to make sure it clicks into place. I will actually push that down, click, there it's in. It's nice and snug. The final step in clocking the remote spool is to make sure that you put the floodgate adjuster back on properly. Now what you're going to see is on top where the actual poker is, there's a wrench flat or a flat that the little screw butts up against. So you want to make sure that you line that up properly. Okay, so the first step in installing the remote Poplock lever, we need to slide the cable through and make sure it goes into your housing and make sure that your housing is cut at the right length. We're going to run that through the cable stop. Once we make sure that the cable is seated in the back, we want to go ahead and close the Poplock lever closed. Okay, now we're going to take the cable and we're going to actually thread it through the spool. There's a hole right there. We want to be careful that the cable doesn't get kinked as we pull it through. Now this is an important step. We're going to use the cable to rotate the spring and actually lock the spool against the cable stop. So I'm going to pull this very carefully until it touches. Okay, I can feel that that's touching. I'm kind of holding the cable in place. Taking my 1.5 millimeter hex, a good quality one always helps, and cinching that down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check and make sure, okay, the spool is touching the cable stop. Let's go ahead and check the operation. Oh yeah, it's sweet. The final step is let's put the bike on the ground. Let's check and make sure that the Poplock is easy to reach. Your controls look like they're in the right place. Now let's check the function. When I'm in the open position, how's the fork? Cross-country plush, just like we want it. Hit the Poplock lever. Let's see the lock feature. Perfect, nice and firm, just a little bit of movement. Perfect for that cross-country racer. I did a pretty good job. I'm sure you can too.